I gave my parents a luxurious 7 days vacation to Asia with me. When I picked them up to go to the airport, they told me they decided to go with my jobless brother instead of me. My father smiled. Your brother needed some rest, so we decided to take him. I didn't say anything. They had a big surprise when they landed in Japan. The morning my parents told me they were taking my brother instead of me, the sky was that particular shade of blue that only exists in late autumn, crisp, almost too bright. I remember standing in their driveway with my car running, the trunk already popped open to receive their luggage, and thinking how strange it was that the weather could be so beautiful on a day that would hollow me out. I had arrived early. That was the kind of person I was. The kind who arrives early, who triple checks itineraries, and who spends months planning every detail of a gift designed to say what I could never seem to say with words alone. I love you. I see you. I want to give you something beautiful. 7 days in Japan. Cherry blossom season had passed, but I'd chosen autumn deliberately, the momiji, the maple leaves turning the mountains into watercolors of red and gold. I'd booked the ryokan in Hakone with the private onsen overlooking the valley. I'd arranged the kaiseki dinners, the Shinkansen tickets, the guided tour of the Fushimi Inari shrine at dawn, when the torii gates would be empty and the light would come through like something sacred. 14 months of planning, 11 months of saving, setting aside a portion of every paycheck into an account I'd labeled simply gift. I'd skipped vacations of my own, declined dinners with friends, worn the same winter coat for the third year running because the money had a purpose. The money was becoming something. And now I stood in the driveway while my father smiled at me with that particular expression he reserved for delivering news he knew I wouldn't like. A smile that was almost apologetic, but not quite, because true apology would require acknowledgement that something wrong was being done. Your brother needed some rest, he said, so we decided to take him instead. The words hung in the autumn air. Behind him, I could see my mother in the doorway, not quite meeting my eyes. She was holding her purse against her chest like a shield. I didn't say anything. What was there to say? The flights were in their names. I'd made sure of that, wanting it to feel like their trip, their adventure. The hotel reservations, the rail passes, the restaurant bookings, all transferable, all designed to be theirs completely. I'd kept nothing for myself except the plan to accompany them, to watch their faces when they saw the golden pavilion reflected in still water, to sit beside my father in a bullet train hurtling past Mount Fuji at 285 kilometers per hour. Marcus will enjoy it, my mother said from the doorway. He's been so stressed lately. Marcus, my younger brother by 4 years, 31 years old and still living in our parents' basement, still figuring things out, still stressed by the tremendous burden of existing without obligation or responsibility. Marcus, who had not held a job in 3 years. Marcus, who borrowed money from our parents and never paid it back because paying it back was never expected. Marcus, who had not contributed a single yen to this trip. I should have called, my father said, and there was something in his voice that might have been genuine regret, though I had long ago stopped trying to distinguish between his real emotions and his performed ones. But we only decided last night. Marcus was feeling low, and your mother thought, it's fine, I said. The words came out flat and smooth like stones worn down by water. Are you sure? My mother stepped onto the porch now, her face arranged in that expression of concerned hope that I knew so well. She wanted me to be fine. She needed me to be fine so that she could proceed without guilt, so that the decision could be reframed as something generous rather than something taken. I'm sure, I said. Have a good trip. I closed my trunk. I walked back to the driver's side door. I got in and I drove away. And in the rearview mirror, I saw my father raise his hand in a wave that seemed uncertain, as if he was just now beginning to realize something might be wrong. The thing about being the reliable one is that reliability becomes invisible. It fades into the background of expectation, becomes the wallpaper of the family dynamic, noticed only in its absence and never in its presence. I was the one who had put myself through college. Scholarships, work study, summer jobs that left me exhausted but solvent. My parents had helped with Marcus's education, or tried to until he dropped out sophomore year to pursue his music. The music had never materialized into anything beyond a SoundCloud page with 3 uploads and 17 followers, 12 of whom were family members. I was the one who had moved back after my father's heart attack, spending 6 months in my childhood bedroom so I could drive him to cardiac rehab 3 times a week. Marcus had visited twice during that period, once for Thanksgiving, once because his apartment had flooded and he needed somewhere to stay. I was the one who called every Sunday without fail, who remembered birthdays without reminders, who showed up with groceries during the pandemic when my parents were afraid to leave the house. I was the one who listened to my mother's anxieties about aging and my father's frustrations about retirement. I was the one who never asked for anything because asking for things felt like a weakness, like an admission that I wasn't as capable as I needed to be. And I was the one who had planned this trip, this gift, this gesture that was supposed to be the culmination of all that love I'd stored up but never quite known how to express. I drove home in silence. No radio, no podcasts, just the sound of tires on asphalt and my own breathing, which seemed very loud in the quiet of the car. My apartment was 40 minutes away, but I found myself taking the long route, driving past the lake where my father used to take us fishing when we were boys, past the elementary school where I had won a spelling bee in 4th grade, while my parents sat in the audience beaming, past the diner where my mother used to treat me to pancakes after church on Sundays. I was looking for something, evidence maybe. Proof that the family I thought I belonged to had actually existed, that the love I thought I had earned was real and not imagined. But the lake was just a lake. The school was just a building. The diner had closed 3 years ago and was now a vape shop. When I got home, I sat in my parked car for a long time. The engine was off and the cold was starting to seep through the windows, but I didn't move. I was thinking about the itinerary on my laptop, the folder full of confirmation emails, the small notebook where I had written down phrases in Japanese that I'd planned to teach my parents. Arigatou gozaimasu. Thank you very much. Sumimasen. Excuse me, I'm sorry. Thank you. All wrapped into one word. Oishi. Delicious. I had imagined my mother saying this. Her face lit up with surprise and pleasure as she tasted her first real miso soup, her first perfectly grilled wagyu, her first matcha so vibrant green it looked like a color from another world. I had imagined so much. Now Marcus would be the one, sitting beside them on the plane, Marcus with his headphones in and his eyes closed. Marcus, who probably hadn't looked at the itinerary, who probably didn't know the difference between a ryokan and a regular hotel, who would scroll through his phone during the kaiseki dinner instead of experiencing each course as the work of art it was meant to be. I went inside, I fed my cat. I poured a glass of wine and then poured it down the sink because drinking alone on a Tuesday morning felt like the beginning of something I didn't want to become. I opened my laptop and looked at the flight tracker. Departure, 3:40 p.m. It was now 11:23 a.m. My phone buzzed at noon. A text from my mother. A selfie of her and my father and Marcus in the airport terminal. Marcus was making a peace sign. My mother was smiling. My father looked slightly bewildered by the process of taking a photograph with a phone. At the airport, she wrote. So excited. I stared at the message for a long time. Then I typed back, "Have a wonderful trip." She responded with a heart emoji. I put down my phone and went for a walk. The air was cold and sharp, and the leaves crunched under my feet with each step. I walked without destination, letting my legs carry me through the neighborhood and into the small park at the end of the block. There was a bench facing a pond that was half covered with fallen leaves. I sat down and watched a few ducks navigate the floating debris, their movements calm and purposeful. I thought about calling my friend Janine. She would understand. She would be appropriately outraged on my behalf and would say all the things I needed to hear about boundaries and self-worth and the impossibility of earning love from people who weren't capable of seeing you. But I didn't call her, because saying the words out loud would make them real, would transform the quiet ache in my chest into something I would have to name and examine and carry. Instead, I sat on the bench until my fingers went numb. The flight left on time. I know because I was watching. I had pulled up the flight tracker on my laptop and sat there as the little airplane icon lifted off from the runway and began its long arc across the Pacific. 14 hours to Tokyo. I imagined them settling into their seats. My father would take the window, because he always did, even though he spent most flights with his eyes closed. My mother would sit in the middle, making small talk with flight attendants and neighboring passengers. And Marcus, I didn't know where Marcus would sit. The aisle, probably. Easy access to the bathroom. Easy access to escape. I had booked business class. Not first, I couldn't afford first, but business. With the seats that reclined into beds and the personal entertainment systems and the hot towels before meals, it had cost an extra $2,000. But I had wanted my parents to experience something luxurious, something beyond the budget travel they had done their whole lives. Marcus was experiencing it now. I closed the laptop and put it on the shelf. Then I went to bed, even though it was only 4 in the afternoon. I lay there in the gray light of my bedroom, staring at the ceiling, listening to the silence of my apartment. The cat jumped up and curled against my side, and her weight was the only warm thing in the world. I woke up at 2 a.m. and couldn't go back to sleep. The flight tracker showed them somewhere over the northern Pacific, a tiny icon suspended in blue digital ocean. I made coffee even though I didn't want it. I turned on the television even though I didn't watch it. I sat on my couch with the mug growing cold in my hands and thought about all the things I'd never said. I thought about the Christmas when I was 12 and Marcus was 8, when I had saved up my allowance for months to buy our mother a necklace. A simple silver chain with a small heart pendant. I had wrapped it carefully, had been so proud of my choice. But when she opened it, she smiled and thanked me, and then set it aside to exclaim over Marcus's gift. A macaroni-covered picture frame he had made in art class. He made it himself, she had said, her voice full of wonder, with his own little hands. The necklace was never worn. I found it years later in a drawer, still in its box, the pendant tarnished. I thought about the high school graduation where my father had spent the reception on his phone with Marcus, who had gotten into trouble again and needed advice, or money more likely. I had graduated valedictorian. My father had shaken my hand and said he was proud, but his eyes kept drifting to the phone in his pocket, to the crisis happening elsewhere. I thought about the job offer I had turned down in Seattle. A great job, a better job, more money and more opportunity because my parents were getting older and I wanted to be close. Marcus had moved to Portland that same year, 3,000 miles away, and no one had suggested he stay. I thought about all the ways I had shaped my life around them and how the shape was starting to feel less like love and more like a cage I had built for myself. At 3 a.m., I pulled out a legal pad and started writing. Not a letter, I wasn't going to send it, but just words. A purging of everything that had been building inside me for years. I'm tired of being invisible. I am tired of earning something that should be given. I am tired of watching him take and take while I give, and the math never works out. But I keep trying anyway. I am tired of being reliable. I am tired of being good. I wrote until my hand cramped and the coffee went completely cold. Then I tore the pages from the pad, crumpled them up, and threw them away. Some things were not meant to be kept. They landed in Tokyo at 6:47 p.m. Japan Standard Time. I knew because my mother sent a photo of the tarmac through the airplane window, the lights of Narita Airport glowing in the early evening darkness. "We made it," she wrote. "The flight was amazing. They had beds." "I'm glad," I typed back. And then, because I couldn't help myself, "Don't forget to validate your rail passes before using them." She sent a thumbs up emoji. I imagine them in the airport now, navigating customs, following the signs to the train. I had printed out detailed instructions for everything. The specific platform for the Narita Express, the station where they would transfer, the address of the hotel, written in both English and Japanese, so they could show it to a taxi driver if they got lost. Had they brought the instructions? Had Marcus even looked at them? I didn't ask. I put down my phone and went back to bed. The first message came the next morning, my time. A flurry of photos. The view from the hotel room, the breakfast spread, the crowded streets of Shinjuku. "Everything is so beautiful," my mother wrote. "Thank you for this gift, sweetheart." I stared at the message for a long time. Thank you for this gift. As if the gift was simply the trip itself, the flights and hotels, the reservations and rail passes. As if the gift was not also supposed to include me, my presence, my company, my desire to experience something beautiful together. "You're welcome," I wrote. "Enjoy your day." I went to work. I sat at my desk and answered emails and attended meetings and smiled at my colleagues when they asked about my weekend. I did not tell them that my parents were in Japan right now, experiencing the trip I had spent over a year planning. I did not tell them that my brother was there instead of me, sleeping in the room I'd chosen, eating the meals I had arranged. I said I had a quiet weekend. I said I had done some reading. I said I was fine. On the second day, my mother sent photos of Sensoji, the ancient temple in Asakusa with its massive red lantern and the long shopping street leading up to it. I had planned for them to visit on their third day, but they had gone early. Marcus had wanted to get the tourist stuff out of the way. Marcus found a wonderful little ramen shop for lunch, she wrote. He's really good at finding things on his phone. I had researched that ramen shop myself. I had added it to the itinerary specifically, had read reviews and checked hours and noted that they should arrive before noon to avoid the longest lines. Now it was Marcus's discovery. Marcus's gift to our parents. I didn't reply. On the third day, they went to Hakone. The ryokan I had booked, a family-run establishment that had been operating for over a century, with tatami rooms and sliding paper doors and views of the mountains that I had seen in photographs and imagined seeing in person. My mother sent a video of the private onsen, steam rising from the water, the valley stretching out below, misty and green and impossibly peaceful. "This is incredible," she said, her voice hushed in the recording. "I can't believe this is real." In the background, I could hear my father saying something and then Marcus laughing. They sounded happy. They sounded like a family experiencing something wonderful together. I watched the video 3 times. Then I turned off my phone and put it in a drawer. On the fourth day, my phone stayed in the drawer. I went to work. I came home. I fed the cat, ate a dinner I couldn't taste, watched a television show I couldn't follow. The silence of my apartment felt different now. Not peaceful, but hollow. The kind of quiet that presses against your ears and makes you aware of your own heartbeat. I thought about calling Janine. I thought about calling my old therapist, the one I had stopped seeing because I had convinced myself I was fine. I thought about getting in my car and driving somewhere, anywhere, just to feel the emotion of going. But I didn't do any of those things. I sat on my couch with the cat purring beside me and I let the hours pass. On the 5th day, I took my phone out of the drawer. There were 17 new messages from my mother. Photos from Kyoto, the Golden Pavilion, the bamboo grove, the geisha they had glimpsed walking down a narrow street at dusk. There were voice messages, too. My mother's voice full of wonder as she described the kaiseki dinner. The way each dish was like a tiny work of art. The way the chef had bowed to them as they left. And there was a message from Marcus. "Hey sis," it said, "this is pretty cool. Thanks for setting it up." I stared at those words, "thanks for setting it up," as if I were a travel agent, as if I had simply done my job, provided a service, fulfilled a function. As if the trip was a thing to be consumed and I was just the mechanism of its delivery. I typed back, "Glad you're enjoying it." Then I deleted the conversation. On the 6th day, my mother sent a photo that stopped my breath. They were at a temple. I couldn't tell which one, but it was beautiful with autumn leaves framing the shot in shades of orange and gold. My parents were in the center of the frame, my father's arm around my mother's shoulders, both of them smiling. And beside them, leaning in with an easy grin, was Marcus. They looked like a family. They looked complete. I saved the photo to my phone and then immediately deleted it. Then I went to my recently deleted folder and deleted it again, permanently, as if I could erase the image from my memory as easily as I could erase it from my device. But I couldn't. Picture stayed in my head, replaying itself, and every time I closed my eyes, the 3 of them, together, happy, without me. On the 7th day, they flew home. My mother called me from the airport, her voice tired but still excited, full of stories she wanted to share. The temple where she had drawn a fortune and it had said good luck was coming. The train station where they had gotten lost and a kind stranger had walked them to their platform. The small shop in Kyoto where she had bought me a gift, a silk scarf, she said, in a beautiful blue that made her think of my eyes. "It was wonderful," she said. "It was the best trip of my life." "Thank you, honey. Thank you so much." I listened to her talk. I made the appropriate sounds. "Oh, how nice. That sounds beautiful. I'm so glad." And when she asked if I would come over for dinner later in the week to see all the photos, I said of course I would. "I'll make your favorite," she said. "Pot roast, to say thank you properly." I said that sounded lovely. Then I hung up and sat very still in the silence of my apartment, listening to the sound of nothing at all. The dinner was on Thursday. I arrived at 6 o'clock as my mother had requested. I brought a bottle of wine, a nice one, not too expensive, the kind that said I cared without saying I was trying too hard. I wore a sweater my mother had given me for Christmas 3 years ago because I knew it would make her happy to see it. The house smelled like pot roast and something else. Something sweet. Apple pie, maybe, or cobbler. My father met me at the door with a hug that lasted longer than usual. "Good to see you, sweetheart," he said. Marcus was in the living room, stretched out on the couch with his phone. He waved without looking up. "Hey, sis." "Hey." My mother emerged from the kitchen, wiping her hands on her apron, her face bright with the particular joy she always got from having her children under the same roof. "Come sit," she said. "Dinner's almost ready, but first we have to show you the photos. We took so many. Marcus, put down that phone and come help." Marcus sighed but complied, and we all gathered around the laptop on the dining table while my mother scrolled through hundreds of images. The Shinkansen, the bamboo forest, the view from the ryokan, the ramen shop that Marcus had discovered, the temples, the shrines, the neon-lit streets of Tokyo at night. In every photo where my family appeared, it was the three of them, together, complete. I smiled and nodded and said all the right things. "That's beautiful. What a view. I'm so glad you got to experience that." And when my mother got to the photo, the one at the temple, with the autumn leaves and the smiles and the family that looked so happy, she paused and touched the screen almost reverently. "This is my favorite," she said. "I want to frame it." "You should," I said. "It's a lovely photo." My father reached over and squeezed my hand. "We missed you," he said. "It wasn't the same without you." And for a moment, I almost believed him. Dinner was good. The pot roast was tender and the wine was nice, and my mother had indeed made apple pie, my favorite, served warm with vanilla ice cream. We talked about Japan, about the things they'd seen and done, about the moments that had surprised them or moved them or made them laugh. My mother told the story about the lost train station 3 times, each time with slightly different details. My father described the kaiseki dinner with more enthusiasm than I had ever heard him express about food. Marcus occasionally looked up from his phone to add a comment, usually about something being cool or crazy or wild. And I sat there at the table where I had sat as a child, in the chair that had always been mine. And I felt like a ghost. Not invisible exactly. They could see me, they spoke to me, smiled at me, included me in the conversation. But there was a distance between us that had nothing to do with geography, a gap that had been there for years, maybe always, and that I was only now allowing myself to see clearly. They loved me. I believe that. I believe they loved me in the way they were capable of loving, with a love that was real but also conditional, dependent on my reliability, my steadiness, my willingness to give without demanding anything in return. But they preferred Marcus. That was the truth I'd been running from my whole life. Marcus, with his needs and his failures and his perpetual crises, commanded their attention in a way I never could. Marcus was the one they worried about, thought about, talked about. Marcus was the one who occupied their minds and their hearts. I was just the one who showed up. I helped clear the dishes and load the dishwasher. I hugged my parents goodbye and said I'd call on Sunday, same as always. I nodded to Marcus, who was already back on the couch with his phone, and he raised a hand in acknowledgement without looking up. Then I walked out to my car and I sat there in the dark for a long time, staring at the house where I had grown up. The windows glowed warm and yellow. Inside, my family was settling into their evening routine. My mother probably putting away the leftovers, my father turning on the evening news, Marcus drifting down to the basement where he lived. They would not wonder where I was or what I was thinking. They would not discuss the trip I had planned, the money I had spent, the year of my life I had devoted to creating something beautiful for them. The trip had happened. They had enjoyed it. And now it was over, filed away with all the other experiences that comprised their lives. I started the car and drove home. The following weeks were quiet. I went to work. I came home. I fed the cat, ate my dinners, watched my shows. The routines of my life continued uninterrupted, the same patterns I had followed for years, as if nothing had changed. But something had changed. Or rather, something had become visible that had always been there. Like a crack in a wall that you've walked past 1,000 times without noticing until one day the light hits it differently and suddenly it's all you can see. I started paying attention. I noticed how my Sunday calls with my mother were always punctuated by updates about Marcus. What Marcus was doing, what Marcus was feeling, what Marcus needed. I noticed how my father, who rarely initiated contact, would call when Marcus had done something that worried him, gotten into an argument, missed a payment, said something that suggested he might be struggling. I noticed how in the family group text, conversations about me lasted 2 or 3 messages before shifting back to other topics, while conversations about Marcus could go on for days. I noticed how I was expected to attend holiday gatherings and birthday dinners without question, while Marcus's attendance was treated as a special gift when it occurred and an understandable absence when it didn't. I noticed how my achievements, the promotion at work, the article I published, the half marathon I trained for and completed, were acknowledged with brief praise and then forgotten. While Marcus's smallest efforts, a job interview, a clean week, a phone call to say hello, were celebrated as evidence of growth and potential. I noticed how tired I was. How deeply, profoundly tired. It was Janine who finally got me to talk about it. We were at our usual coffee shop, the one near the park where we met every other Saturday morning. She had been telling me about her sister's wedding drama, a saga involving seating charts and dietary restrictions, and one catastrophically timed revelation about the best man's history with the bride. I had been nodding and making sympathetic sounds, but she stopped mid-sentence and fixed me with a look that meant she was about to stop pretending. "What's wrong with you?" "Nothing," I said automatically. "I'm fine." "You're not fine. You've been not fine for weeks. You're doing that thing where you go all quiet and internal and pretend everything's okay when it obviously isn't." I stirred my coffee. It was already cold, which meant I'd been sitting here, stirring it for too long. "The Japan trip," I said finally. "The one I planned for my parents." "Right, the one you've been saving for all year. How did it go?" "They took Marcus instead of me." Janine set down her cup, slowly, carefully, the way you might set down a fragile thing that you're afraid of breaking. "I'm sorry," she said. "What?" And then I told her everything. The morning in the driveway, my father's smile, the way my mother couldn't quite meet my eyes, the photos from Japan, Marcus's casual gratitude, the dinner where I sat at the table where I had sat my whole life and felt like a stranger, the accumulated weight of a lifetime of trying and failing to be enough. Janine listened without interrupting. When I finished, she was quiet for a long moment. "That's incredibly fucked up," she said finally. "You know that, right? That's not normal. That's not okay." "I know," I said. "Do you? Because you're talking about it like you're describing something that happened to someone else. Like you're narrating a documentary about a woman whose family treats her like a convenience." I looked down at my cold coffee. What am I supposed to do? They're my family. They're your family, and they let your brother take the trip you spent a year planning. The trip you designed specifically to share something beautiful with them. And they did it without even calling you first. He needed the rest. He was stressed. "Oh, so it's fine then." Marcus was stressed. Janine's voice was sharp with a sarcasm I rarely heard from her. "Marcus, who hasn't worked in 3 years. Marcus, who lives in their basement. Marcus, who needed a luxury vacation to Japan to recover from the tremendous stress of doing absolutely nothing." I didn't respond. There was nothing to respond with. "You need to say something," Janine said. "To them, to your parents. You need to tell them how this made you feel. They would just make excuses. They'd say they're sorry, they didn't realize, they didn't mean to hurt me. And then nothing would change. Maybe, or maybe hearing it out loud would make them actually think about it." I shook my head. "I've spent my whole life trying to get them to see me. I'm tired of trying." Janine reached across the table and took my hand. Her grip was firm and warm. "Then stop trying for them," she said, "and start trying for yourself." I didn't say anything to my parents. Not that week or the week after or the week after that, but I started to change. It was small at first, almost imperceptible. I stopped being the first one to text in the family chat. I let my Sunday calls with my mother run a little shorter, ending them when the conversation naturally lulled rather than pushing through to fill the silence. I declined an invitation to help Marcus move some furniture, claiming I had plans that weekend. I didn't. I spent the day reading and watching movies and doing nothing at all, and it felt like a revolution. I stopped volunteering for holiday coordination. When my mother asked if I could handle Thanksgiving dinner again, I said I was sorry, but I had other commitments this year. She was confused. I had hosted every Thanksgiving for the past 6 years, but she didn't push. She said they'd figure something out. I stopped being available at all hours for Marcus's minor crises. When he texted asking if I could loan him $200 for a car repair, I said I was sorry, but I wasn't in a position to help right now. He didn't respond. A week later, our mother mentioned that she and Dad had given him the money. I stopped expecting things to be different. That was the hardest part, letting go of the hope that had sustained me for so long. The belief that if I just tried hard enough, gave enough, sacrificed enough, they would finally see me the way I needed to be seen. They wouldn't. They couldn't, maybe. And that wasn't something I could fix by trying harder. December came cold and gray. The holidays approached with their usual relentless momentum, and I found myself dreading them in a way I never had before. And it was my mother who finally noticed that something had changed. She called on a Wednesday evening, which was unusual. Our calls were always on Sunday. Her voice was tentative, careful, as if she was approaching a door she wasn't sure she wanted to open. "Honey, is everything okay?" "Everything's fine," I said. "Why?" "You've seemed distant lately. We haven't talked as much. And you've been so busy, we barely see you anymore." I was sitting on my couch with the cat in my lap, the TV muted in the background. The apartment was warm and quiet, and I thought about how nice it was to have my own space, my own silence. "I'm not busy," I said. "I'm just doing things differently." "What does that mean?" I took a breath. Janine's words echoed in my head. "Start trying for yourself." "I'm stepping back a little," I said, "from the family, from being the one who always organizes things, always shows up, always makes things happen. I need some space." There was a long silence. "Is this about the Japan trip?" my mother asked finally. Her voice was very small. I didn't answer. "Because if it is, your father and I, we talked about it afterward. We realized we should have handled it differently. We should have called you first, should have discussed it. We felt terrible about it." "You felt terrible," I repeated, but you still went." "Marcus was struggling. He needed—" "Marcus always needs," I said, and my voice was calm, steady, almost gentle. "Marcus always needs something, and I'm always the one who understands, who steps aside, who makes room. And that's fine, Mom. That's who he is, and who I am, and who we've all always been. But I'm tired. And I need something different now. What do you need?" It was a genuine question. I could hear in her voice that she actually wanted to know, that underneath the defensive instincts and the habitual patterns, there was a mother who loved her daughter and was afraid of losing her. "I need you to notice when I'm not there," I said. "Not so you'll invite me, not so you'll include me, but just notice. Notice that for years I've been showing up and trying and giving everything I have, and it's never been enough because the measuring stick was never meant for me. Notice that I planned that trip because I wanted to give you something beautiful, and you took it for someone else. Notice that I exist, Mom, even when I'm not doing something useful." She was crying. I could hear it in her breathing, the small catches that punctuated the silence. "I'm sorry," she said. "I'm so sorry." "I know," I said. "I know you are." We stayed on the phone for a while longer, not talking much, just existing together in the space between words. When we finally hung up, I felt something release in my chest, not resolution, not forgiveness, but something like the first exhale after holding your breath for a very long time. I skipped Christmas that year. Not entirely. I sent gifts, called on the day itself, exchanged pleasantries and well wishes, but I didn't make the drive to my parents' house. I didn't sit at the table with the family. I didn't watch Marcus open presents that had probably been bought with money our parents had redirected from their savings. Didn't smile and nod as they exclaimed over his gifts while barely glancing at mine. Instead, I had Christmas with Janine and a few other friends who were also avoiding family gatherings for various reasons. We cooked too much food and drank too much wine and watched bad holiday movies until we fell asleep on the couch. It was silly and imperfect and nothing like the Christmases I'd always forced myself to endure. It was wonderful. My mother called on Christmas night, her voice carefully cheerful. "We missed you today," she said. "I missed you too," I said, and I meant it. But I needed this. I needed something different. She didn't argue. She didn't try to convince me I was wrong or make me feel guilty for my absence. She just said she loved me, and I said I loved her too, and that was enough. Winter gave way to spring, and spring to summer, and gradually the rhythms of my life continued to shift. I stopped waiting for my parents to call me. I called when I wanted to talk, and I let the silences between conversations stretch out naturally. I stopped monitoring Marcus's crises or offering solutions. When my parents mentioned his struggles, I said I was sorry to hear that and changed the subject. I focused on my own life, the job I was good at, the friends who showed up for me, the hobbies I had neglected for years in favor of family obligations. I took a pottery class and discovered I was terrible at it, but enjoyed it anyway. I trained for another half marathon. I adopted a second cat, a shy orange tabby named Mango, who hid under the bed for the first week and then became my shadow. I was not healed exactly. The wounds were still there, still tender to the touch, but I was learning to carry them differently, not as evidence of my failure, but as proof of what I had survived. It was October when my father called. This was unusual enough to alarm me. My father almost never called, preferring to let my mother handle family communications. When I saw his name on the screen, my first thought was that someone had died. "Dad, is everything okay?" "Everything's fine," he said. I wanted to talk to you. Is this a good time?" I was in my car, parked outside the grocery store. I had been about to go in, but something in his voice made me stay. "It's a good time." He was quiet for a moment. I could hear him breathing, the slight wheeze that had been there since the heart attack. "I've been thinking about the Japan trip," he said finally, "about what happened." I didn't respond. I waited. "I should have said no," he said. "When your mother suggested bringing Marcus instead, I should have said no. It was your trip, your gift. And we took it from you, and I told myself it was because your brother needed it. But that wasn't true. We took it because it was easier. Because saying yes to Marcus is always easier than saying yes to you." I felt something shift in my chest. Not forgiveness, not yet, but something like recognition. "Why is it easier?" I asked. "Because you don't make us worry. Because you've always been fine, always been capable, and always figured things out on your own. We didn't have to take care of you, so we forgot that maybe you still wanted to be taken care of. We forgot that you might need things too." "I did need things," I said quietly. "I needed a lot of things." I know that now. Your mother and I, we've talked about it a lot since Christmas. About how we got so used to you being strong that we stopped seeing when you were hurting. About how we asked too much and gave too little and told ourselves it was okay because you never complained. I was crying now, silently, the tears running down my face and dripping onto my jacket. I didn't wipe them away. "I'm sorry," my father said. "I'm sorry I didn't see you. I'm sorry we made you feel like you had to earn something that should have been given freely. I'm sorry about the trip and about all the trips before it. All the times we chose the easier thing instead of the right thing." I took a breath, then another. "Thank you," I said, "for saying that. I should have said it sooner. I should have said it a long time ago." We talked for a while after that, about nothing important, about the weather and his garden and the book he was reading. When we hung up, I sat in my car for a long time, watching the people going in and out of the grocery store, living their ordinary lives. Something had shifted. Not fixed, not resolved, but shifted. Like a bone finally settling back into its socket after being out of place for years. I didn't go back to the way things were, but I started going forward in a different way. I visited my parents more often, not out of obligation, but because I wanted to. The visits were shorter, less freighted with expectation. We had dinners that didn't revolve around Marcus's needs or my achievements. We just talked about my mother's garden, my father's health, the small details of daily life. Marcus and I didn't become closer. That wasn't something I could manufacture, and I stopped trying, and he was my brother. And I loved him in the way you love someone you've known your whole life, but we were not friends. We probably never would be. But I stopped resenting him for it. He was who he was. Someone who took what was offered without thinking about what it cost. Someone who needed to be the center without noticing the edges. That wasn't going to change, and I stopped expecting it to. What changed was me. The following autumn, I booked a trip to Japan, just for myself this time. 2 weeks in October, when the Momiji would be at their peak. I went to all the places I had planned to take my parents. The Golden Pavilion, the Bamboo Forest, the Ryokan in Hakone with its view of the mountains. I walked through the torii gates at Fushimi Inari at dawn, just as I had imagined, the light coming through the vermilion columns like something from another world. I ate kaiseki dinners alone, savoring each course, letting the artistry wash over me without needing to explain it to anyone else. I sat in the onsen at the ryokan and watched the steam rise against the autumn hills, the maples blazing red and gold in the fading light. The valley stretched out below, misty and beautiful and completely silent. And I thought about my parents back home in their house with their routines and their worries and their complicated love. I thought about Marcus in the basement, still figuring things out, still needing things. I thought about the family I had been born into and the person I was becoming, and how those two things no longer had to be in conflict. I had wanted to give my parents something beautiful. That part was true, but what I had really wanted, what I had needed all along, was for them to want to experience that beauty with me, to choose me, not because I was useful or reliable or the one who always showed up, but because they wanted my presence, because I mattered to them the way I had always wanted to matter. They hadn't chosen me. That was the truth, and it still hurt. And maybe it would always hurt a little. But I was choosing myself now. That was something I could do. That was something I could carry forward into every day that came after. On my last night in Kyoto, I walked through the Gion district at dusk. The streets were narrow and quiet, the wooden buildings glowing warm in the evening light. Somewhere in the distance, I could hear the sound of a shamisen, a traditional three-stringed instrument, whose music always sounded to me like longing itself. I passed a small shrine tucked between two buildings, just a stone structure with a faded red torii gate and a few offerings left by passers-by. On impulse, I stopped and bowed, then clapped twice the way I had seen others do. I didn't pray exactly, but I stood there for a moment, breathing in the cool evening air, and I let myself feel everything I had been carrying for so long. The love and the loss and the longing, the years of trying and the slow release of trying less. The grief for the family I had wanted and the acceptance of the family I had. When I walked away, I felt lighter. Not healed, not fixed, just lighter. I flew home 2 days later. The flight was long, and I slept most of it. My head against the window, the clouds passing below like a white sea stretching to the horizon. When I landed, I turned on my phone and found a message from my mother. "Hope you're having a wonderful trip," she wrote. "We're so happy you finally got to go. Can't wait to see your photos. Love you." I looked at the message for a long time. Then I typed back, "It was beautiful. I'll tell you all about it. Love you too." And I walked out into the arrivals hall where no one was waiting for me, where the crowd parted and flowed around me like water around a stone, where I was alone and fine and exactly where I was supposed to be. Some stories don't end with confrontation. Some stories don't end with justice, or resolution, or the satisfying click of pieces falling into place. Some stories just end with a person standing in an airport, holding a suitcase full of souvenirs and a heart full of complicated feelings, walking forward into whatever comes next. This is one of those stories. I don't know if my parents truly understood what they did. I don't know if my father's phone call changed anything, or if it was just words, just another apology in a lifetime of apologies that never quite touched the wound they were meant to heal. I don't know if Marcus will ever become the person our parents hope he might be. I don't know if I will ever stop feeling the quiet ache when I see photographs of my family and wonder why I always seem to be missing from the frame. What I know is this: I went to Japan. I saw the golden pavilion reflected in still water, the maples burning red against gray stone, the sun setting over Kyoto, while the city slowly lit up like a constellation coming to life. I experienced beauty and I experienced it alone, and that was enough. What I know is this: I am learning to take up space in my own life, to want things without apology, to give without expecting return, but also to stop giving when the giving empties me. What I know is this: love is not always fair and family is not always kind, and the people who should see you most clearly are sometimes the most blind. But you can still love them. You can still show up when you choose to, and step back when you need to, and build a life that doesn't depend on their recognition. I have the silk scarf my mother bought me in Kyoto, the one she picked out while she was on my trip with my brother. It's beautiful. A deep blue that does, in fact, match my eyes, with tiny cranes in white and gold scattered across the silk. I wear it sometimes. Not as a reminder of what happened, but as a reminder that complicated things can be true at the same time. My mother loves me. My mother didn't choose me. My mother saw something beautiful and thought of me. My mother let my brother take what was mine, all of it, woven together like threads. That's what family is, maybe. Not a single story, but many stories, overlapping and contradicting, beautiful and painful and impossibly tangled. You don't get to pick which threads you keep. You only get to decide how you wear them. Last month, I started planning another trip. Not for my parents, not for anyone else, just for me. New Zealand this time. The South Island, where the mountains meet the sea and the night sky is so clear you can see galaxies with your naked eye. I'm going alone again. I'm going because I want to, because I can, because I have finally learned that I am worth a gift. When I told my mother about it, she was quiet for a moment. "That sounds wonderful," she said finally. "You deserve it." I didn't argue. I didn't deflect or minimize or say it wasn't a big deal. "I do." And I said, "Thank you." And I meant it. The night before I booked my flights, I dreamed about my parents. We were in Japan, the three of us, together the way I had originally imagined. My father was looking out the window of the Shinkansen, watching the countryside blur past. My mother was reading from a guidebook, planning our next stop, and I was sitting between them, holding both their hands, feeling the warmth of their presence on either side. "This is beautiful," my mother said in the dream. "Thank you for bringing us." "You're welcome," I said. "I'm glad we could be here together." When I woke up, my face was wet with tears. But they weren't sad tears exactly. They were the kind of tears that come when something you've been holding on to finally releases. When you grieve what never was and make peace with what is. I am not the person I was a year ago. I am softer in some ways, harder in others. I forgive more easily and expect less. I show up for the people who show up for me, and I let go of the people who don't. Even when letting go feels like failure. Even when it means the family portrait will always have an empty space where I used to stand. I am learning to be my own home, to build walls that protect without imprisoning, to open doors for the people who deserve to enter, to leave windows for the light even when the wind comes through. It is a slow process. Some days I backslide. Some days I find myself waiting for the phone to ring, hoping for an invitation that will never come. Some days I'm that child again, standing in the driveway with my trunk open, ready to give everything I have for one moment of being chosen. But those days are fewer now. And in between them, there are other days. Days when I wake up in my apartment with my cats curled beside me in the morning light coming through the curtains, and I think, this is enough. This is good. This is mine. I never told my parents about the surprise that waited for them in Japan. When I had booked the trip, I had arranged something special for their arrival at the ryokan. A traditional kaiseki dinner with all their dietary restrictions accommodated, a welcome letter written in calligraphy with their names, a small gift of local sweets waiting in their room. The ryokan had my email on file. They had contacted me when my parents arrived, thanking me for the detailed preparations, asking if there were any final adjustments I wanted to make. I had written back, "No adjustments necessary. I hope they enjoy it." They never mentioned the letter or the sweets or the special dinner. Maybe Marcus had eaten the sweets before my parents saw them. Maybe the letter had been lost or overlooked. Maybe it didn't matter in the end because the gesture had been made and the gift had been given, even if the giving went unrecognized. That's the thing about love. You offer it without guarantee. You extend your hand without knowing if it will be taken. You plan 14 months of perfection and watch it disappear into someone else's memory, and you keep going anyway. Not because you'll ever get it back, but because the offering itself is the point. It's autumn again now. The leaves are turning, the air is getting sharp, and somewhere in Japan, the momiji are beginning their slow burn toward brilliance. I think about it sometimes, the colors I saw, the silence of the mountains, the way the steam rose from the onsen, while the valley painted itself in shades of fire. I think about my parents, too. My father in his garden, my mother in her kitchen, the two of them growing older in the house where I grew up. I think about calling them later, maybe this weekend, to see how they're doing. Not because I have to, not because it's expected, but because I want to hear their voices. We are not fixed, my family and I. We will probably never be what I once wished we could be. But we are something. We are connected by history and blood and all the complicated love that comes with being related to people you didn't choose. And that's okay. That's enough. I am enough. I close my laptop, where the booking confirmation for New Zealand sits ready to be finalized. I look out my window at the sky, which is that particular shade of blue that only exists in late autumn, crisp, almost too bright, impossibly beautiful. And I think, yes, this is good. This is mine. Tomorrow, I will book the flights. Tomorrow, I will plan another adventure, another gift to myself, another step forward into the life I am building. But today, I sit in the stillness of my apartment, surrounded by my cats and my books and the quiet evidence of a life well lived. The afternoon sun slants through the windows, casting long shadows on the floor. I am not waiting anymore. I am already home.